And we're all here today again for one shared belief that every young person deserves to be able to live out their dreams and have the resources and the ability to do so. I'm proud to introduce to you our first lived experience speaker, someone who works day and night to live his dream. I met him last year during last year's Congressional Leadership Academy in Washington, D.C., where we both launched our advocacy work together, and he hasn't stopped since. Hailing from Fresno, California, we have Antonio Aparicio. Antonio is an NFYI Congressional Leadership Academy delegate from the class of 2024, a proud father of four, a recent graduate with a bachelor's in criminal justice, and he's currently pursuing a master's degree in criminal justice as well. And without further ado, Antonio Aparicio.
My God. Thank you, Michael. Thank you all for engaging with our community today. Just want to thank NFYI for launching this campaign because this is urgent. What I live through, what I see every day in my life, working at a rehab center for youth is urgent. I get to work with young people who grew up in foster care like me. Many of the young people I care for struggle with mental health issues and substance abuse. And so many of their paths have been shaped by systems that are familiar to me and so many others on this call today. Unaddressed trauma, food insecurity, job insecurity, being removed from their home in the name of neglect, when in reality, it was poverty. Those aren't just isolated issues, they're launch pads. They're launching youth straight into the foster care to prison pipelines. That's why I can't help but support redefining neglect at the federal level, like NFYI is proposing. We need to stop confusing poverty with parental failure, and we need to do everything we can to keep kids with their families whenever it's safe to do so. Because if we don't intervene early, the next stop is too often the justice system. And what could be more urgent than that? I know this not just because the youth I work with, but because I've lived it. I've been in foster care. I've been in kinship care. I've been incarcerated. I know what it feels like to be seen as a case file instead of a kid. I know what it's like to be treated like a problem instead of a person who needs support. At that time in my life, boxing became my therapy. It was where I learned discipline. It was therapeutic, and I know talk therapy doesn't work for all young people. That's why we need to invest in alternative forms of therapy, because not all young people can process trauma sitting across from a stranger with a notebook. Sometimes healing looks like movement. Sometimes it looks like the community stepping up to become another safety net for an overwhelmed system. Sometimes something as simple as a community center could change the whole direction of someone's life. That's why what we need is diversion programs and more mentoring opportunities. These are places and people where youth can go before they are ever enter the justice system. What I see every day is a lack of diversion. What I see is failing to invest in young people, is failing them both now and when they're adults. There are groups investing in these young people. They are the street. They are street gangs, human traffickers, drug dealers, and often more worse. What I and NFYI ask from you and community partners is to invest in young people so they do not become victims while trying to survive. And finally, I hope that we can work together to create a system that treats children like children. We need to be able to separate youth mental health care from adult mental health care. Medi-Cal all too often lumps those two groups into one, which leads youth being overlooked. We need to develop programs designed specifically for foster youth transitioning out of institutional systems, programs that offer pathways to education and careers, housing, life skills, trauma-informed mental health care, and most of all, mentorship from people who understand. Those aren't just urgent calls, but they are necessary. Those are calls to keep Americans with their families employed and above water in order to participate in the American dream. Thank you all.